Portfolio Composer, episode 182.
You're listening to the Portfolio Composer podcast with your host and coach Garrett Hope, where he teaches you what it takes to master the business end of writing music through mindset, marketing, and business skills. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter at theportfoliocomposer.com for exclusive offers, business insights, and information not shared on the podcast. And now, for this episode of the Portfolio Composer.
And I've discovered that playing it safe in any creative field is actually detrimental to your art making. That's really what I need to say to our listening audience. If you are in a position in which you feel safe, that's actually not where you want to be.
This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. Dorico is the music scoring software of the 21st century, allowing you to write, publish, and play back music notation to the highest professional standards. Created by the world's foremost experts, Dorico marries art, engineering, and AI, resulting in scores of unparalleled balance, warmth, and beauty. Visit Dorico.com/TPC to download a fully functioning 30-day trial version of the software. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Garrett.
Thanks for letting me meet with you. And for those of you who don't know, this is take two because yesterday we sat down and I screwed the mics up. And Michael was so generous to give me his time again. So we're going to try this again for your benefit because Michael Hall is an amazing violist, new music advocate, all-around good guy. And you guys need to hear what he has to say. So Michael, let's just start. Tell us your superhero origin story.
Oh my goodness. Well, first let me say thank you for asking me to be part of this incredible series. It's making such a huge impact on composers and the service that you're providing, the information that we hope that we're granting to not just the next generation, but everybody out there composing, making it a reality. We hope it's making an impact for you. So thank you for asking me to be part of this.
Well, you're welcome. I've been meaning to reach out to you for a while. And since I was coming to Chicago and you're a Chicagoan, like, let's just meet.
This is perfect.
Meeting in person is always better. So how did you come to play the viola?
Okay. So this is, your stereotypical common path to becoming a musician. When I was born, I had some leg problems, orthopedic problems. So I didn't walk in large part properly or almost at all until I was 18. So as a result, I was in the hospital for a great segment of that time at Children's Memorial Hospital here in Chicago. And tons of surgeries, and of course, because it was leg-oriented, I was in traction a lot. So the only way I loved music, but the only outlets I could find to do anything with music was with the piano at the hospital, at the playroom. Each floor, because it's a children's hospital, has a playroom. So I would reach over, bending over to my doctor's chagrin, and play by ear stuff that I heard on the radio, stuff that I heard on TV. That was my outlet. That was my source for music at that time. And then one day, my parents realized this is not really wise or good for him to do, to be stretching over like that. And walking back to the car, they passed a shop. The shop had a sign that said violin, $60. It was a resale shop. They went in and bought it, thinking that this would be so much easier for me to engage with than a big hulking piano. And they brought it the next day. I loved it. I couldn't believe this. It was fantastic. And I'm, for the better part of 3 months, I'm playing on my own, and I was either sounding pretty good or I was sounding really bad because the nurses suggested I get private lessons. And luckily, DePaul University was across the street. They talked a graduate student, my parents, into having her come over and give me some lessons. The day comes. I'm sitting there with my instrument, eager, trying to figure out how to do this thing. And the first thing she says when she walks in the door, the teacher's, that's not a violin.
Well,
what is this? She said, it's a viola.
And how old were you when this happened?
This was 6. I was 6 years old.
Okay, now we normally don't start 6-year-olds on viola.
No.
Because was this a full-sized or a reduced-sized instrument?
It was about a 15.5 inch, so it's actually on the petite size. Not a beginner young. I mean, goodness. That size, 6 years old, almost nobody starts on viola. Very rarely because of the size for the hand, right?
Yeah, we put our daughter in Suzuki violin when she was 3, and I think it was a 1/16.
Yep. So, well, at that time, I didn't realize that you could switch strings during the course of a song. So I thought when you played a piece of music, you had to stay to that one particular string. So I was in like whatever intuition I had at that time, shifting up and down the length of the string to play these pieces, and my hand was just trying to make it work. Wow. But the strange thing is, I didn't care what it was called, violin, viola. I loved it, and I'm often asked by people, so how did you choose viola? But this is going to sound so cheesy, but in a weird sort of way, the viola did actually choose me.
That's amazing. Like Harry Potter and Ollivander's shop, right?
Yeah, almost.
Sparks flew out of the end of your bow.
Minus the cape and the owl. I just get the alto clef in a case.
Wow. And so you've built a whole career around being a violist. That's amazing.
And all the things that entails, more than most people think being a musician is about, right?
Right. Well, let me dig into that a little bit. Obviously, the name of the podcast is The Portfolio Composer. And one of my overriding principles here is that anymore, and now that we're in the 21st century and we're moving into a gigs-based economy and all these things, we need to create multiple sources of income for ourselves. Because the idea of a job, and I'm using air quotes here, is gone. It's long gone. Yeah. Especially in academia.
Most likely.
So what we do is, and this is kind of what I'm thinking about and what we do in the podcast, is we look at forming different activities that then generate income. And then you don't all rely on one. That's a freelancer's life. And if one job fluctuates or goes away, you're not high strung. So here's my question that kind of ties into what you just said. What's in your portfolio, Michael? What are all the things you're doing to make a living?
Well, like most musicians out there, and this is not a really recent phenomenon. Musicians have been doing this for the better part of human history, multiple things, right? It was only during the middle part and the early part of the 20th century that this whole idea in America, and especially the conservatories and the colleges, that study of music became a vocation, where you went and you studied, and with the implicit idea, if you're an orchestral instrumentalist, to get a job, either one of two things. You're going to join an orchestra and get a job via an audition, or you're going to become a college professor. Mm-hmm. That was the only thing you were being trained for at that time. But the rest of human history outside of that 20th century, I think, beforehand, everybody's doing everything. You were composing, you were teaching, you were self-promoting, you were writing about the aesthetics of music, you were talking about the impact, you were dealing with psychology and sociology, let alone just the kinesthetic and physical engagement with the instrument and with each other, right? So in many ways, I'm really delighted that we're returning to some of that. So for myself, in the question that you asked, let's see. Most of my training when I first was in college was about trying to get an orchestra job. You learn your solos, you learn good technique, go out and audition. But quite frankly, and I did that for a little while. And it wasn't so much that I became disillusioned with orchestral playing, it was the audition process itself. It seems so unmusical. So that discovery for myself of trying to play perfectly for an audition versus trying to play convincingly to an audience, which are two different things. I think playing convincingly is even a higher standard than playing perfect. You've got to get all the notes, you've got to get all the rhythms, the dynamics, but it's about the intention.
Right.
Convincing the audience of what you're trying to say, not just saying the directions.
Yeah.
So that realization made me come to the recognition, rather, that I had to do a lot more because I was not going to be happy playing in an orchestra my whole life. So I teach at a college, part-time, an adjunct at Vanderbilt College of Music, which is only music education majors. That's it. Undergrad and graduates, only in music ed. So you're helping create the next generation of teachers, which is exciting. I also commission living composers. I'm up to 52 pieces now that have been written for me, and 8 are in the works as we speak.
That's huge.
I am on the board of the American Viola Society, which means I get to help with composition competition and some policies and helping the next generation of violists there interact with the community, not just with each other. Mm-hmm. I'm also one of the founding members and artistic director of the first professional orchestra in the country of Indonesia, and that's the Bandung Philharmonic. which has been consuming a great deal of my time lately, happily. It's probably the most rewarding endeavor I've ever undertaken professionally.
Wow. Yeah, we'll dig into that. I have lots of questions about that. Okay, so you teach, you commission, but that doesn't generate income for you.
Commissioning, no, but it creates more opportunities. It's interesting. How do you define income? Income is a means to try to do other things. So by commissioning, the currency in that is actually greater engagement with more people. They see that I'm excited to do this, and I hopefully display the fact that I'm 1,000% committed to that piece and that endeavor and that relationship. So in many ways, that currency is transferred into action instead of the middleman of holding a dollar bill.
I like how you phrase that. One of the things that happens a lot in the podcast that comes up, and I believe strongly in, is that we have to be action takers. We create our own opportunities. And an opportunity can lead to income and an enriched network. And you're saying, by the process of commissioning, you are indirectly increasing your portfolio.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
By having commissioned and worked with living composers, this has allowed me to see the world. Quite honestly.
Literally.
Yes. Traveling to Bangkok, traveling to Italy to perform, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Indonesia, Paris. And it's just one of those things that I could not have foreseen how it enveloped this way. There was no game plan originally spelled out for me to do it this way. Because, of course, when I was in college in the 90s, everything was practice hard, and eventually you get a job, and that stability will be granted via tenure in an orchestra or academic institution, right? But this is without tenure. This is without any security net down there. So in many ways, that actually makes me work a hell of a lot harder, I think. It motivates me to do more things that are outside the realm of those two defined positions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things you said just there I want to dig into, but before we do that, you also freelance. That's another part of your, right? I know because we're friends on Facebook that you just finished the tradition. We're recording this the week before Christmas. It's December. But that means that you just did what a lot of professional musicians do in December. We are busy.
Yes.
We are playing in religious ceremonies, but there's also traditional holiday music, Handel Messiah performances.
That's exactly what I just did. The big Handel Messiah series here in downtown Chicago with the Apollo Chorus. They've been doing it every year since like 1897 or something like that. That's tradition. And I love doing that. I think I would be a fool not to engage with that kind of endeavor. And it's not because of financial aspect. It's connection to the community here at home. All of the endeavors I was talking to you about earlier that I'm engaged with, they're in Indonesia and Asia and in Europe and elsewhere. But here at home, you have to have a home base.
Yes.
To make it home, actually, a sense of community. And this production that I do with the Messiah is very Baroque inspired too, which is the exact opposite of my new music playing, but it's also the exact same in with respect that it's highly detailed. It's all about attention to the text.
You're right.
All the articulations, the length and everything is hypersensitive. And it's actually really fulfilled a hole that I had in understanding new music.
Okay.
By playing Baroque music, that attention to hyper detail and subtlety of length and color and articulation has really transferred into my new music to hopefully make that more convincing.
Oh, I'm sure it has. And do you also sit in with some of the major players here in town? So you've got the symphony orchestra, you've got the ballet, you've got the opera.
The ballet, certainly.
Yeah.
The Joffrey Ballet, and with the ensemble called the Chicago Philharmonic. Okay. Which is the second orchestra. And I don't mean to say that it's second in stature, but a lot of people know the CSO, the Chicago Symphony, but there's also the Chicago Philharmonic, which started and is largely about 75% of the lyric opera orchestra when they come out of the pit to play symphonic works.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's an incredible ensemble, exceptional players. So it's always a treat to be part of that.
Sure.
And to be surrounded by that much sound, because I'm usually playing concertos or solos or sonatas or chamber music with the commissions, and then to be surrounded and enveloped with 80 of some of the highest caliber players. Right. It's really gratifying.
That's what I like about ensemble playing. I grew up playing clarinet, which is usually sitting near the front of the ensemble, so the sound was coming from behind me. Now I play the bass and I'm sitting in the back, but still, like, the sound envelops you, wraps around you, and there's really nothing like that experience.
It's the best seats in the house.
Yeah, you can listen to a recording and you're not even going to approximate the feeling that you get.
Very intimate.
It is.
Being inside that ensemble. It's not just about learning the score more. It is you truly get the physical response of that piece being performed because those sounds are bouncing on you.
Oh yeah, literally.
In such a clearly defined fashion. You can feel the brass on the back of your neck. You can feel the oboe and the cellos, and it's exhilarating.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I know you used to do, but you no longer do, is playing a quartet. Tell me more about the quartet and why that ended.
This was the Lake String Quartet.
Okay.
And we started out as students at the Cincinnati Conservatory studying with the Tokyo String Quartet. And they encouraged us to stay together because we collaborated so well in terms of not just musically, but we communicated in a way that all of our rehearsals were devoid of personal pronouns. So there was no accusations. It was about addressing issues in the music. And that is harder. I know all of you musicians are thinking that's hard to do. It's harder than you think it is even to do, to avoid the use of personal pronouns. So it'd be addressing, section B, the tempo of the second violin, or the articulations taking place in the development, or the second motive, or something of that nature. And it caused us to really look at the superstructure of pieces, to really know what the mapping of the pieces were as they were unfolding in rehearsal and in the performance. But it also kept, it allowed us to be more personal with each other, because that separation of professionalism versus collegial and friendship were kept intact. They were never blurred. So that lasted for 7 years, and we were in residence at Yellowstone National Park, of all places.
Sounds amazing.
It was utopic. You're playing Beethoven, or you're playing Shostakovich or Bartok or whatever, and you look to your right, and out the window you see giant moose walk by while you're performing. And it could snow, and did, in July, because you're at such a high elevation. It was another world. You're 90 miles from the closest intersection, not just the closest town. And so you're out there. We rehearsed 5 days a week for 3 hours. We performed 5 days a week. We tried so much different repertoire. It was all over the gamut of classical to a little bit of pop, some self-arranging, some commissioning as well. And it was formative in the fact that it allowed us to really grow independently as artists.
Sure.
To figure out what we wanted to say.
Tell me a story about one of your favorite memories of being in that residency.
Well, oh my gosh, 7 years. There's so many of them.
Right.
This is going to sound so corny, but one of them was actually sitting down and we're finishing playing the Shostakovich Eighth.
Amazing.
Yes. and it was raining profusely. Terrible outside. So it was perfect for the piece, right? The drama and the angst and the tempest-like quality was outside as well as in the music. And then the storm passed and finished as soon as we finished the Shostakovich. And a rainbow appeared over this lake that is behind us. And the mountains, 16 miles on the other side of the lake, are there, snow-capped mountains. A rainbow just arced across the entire vista. And we just happened to have somewhere over the rainbow in our pocket. And we played that. And in the audience was Andre Previn. So we didn't know this. And it was just one of those things where we were already emotionally charged. The room was emotionally charged because it seemed like the world and the weather was cooperating to make this evening very special, right, musically, even beyond music. And he came up and he was very complimentary about what we were doing. So he actually asked if we wouldn't mind playing the Brahms piano quintet with him sometime. And so we spent a couple days rehearsing it, and then we performed it just completely off-the-cuff experience, not scheduled or programmed. But it was a very wonderful experience. We had so many compliments from musicians. And we were very green, though. We thought we were doing this, we were happy with the artistic aspect of it, but we didn't quite understand because we were so young and didn't have any classes in it. We didn't understand the business side of music. So as a result, probably nobody out in the listening audience has ever heard of the Lake String Quartet before this.
Sure.
We didn't travel. We didn't get management. We didn't record other than just for ourselves. And we didn't understand the importance of going to festivals, of going to concert series, of seeking other opportunities like that.
Well, on one hand, you created your own opportunity by essentially convincing the National Park System to put you as artist in residence.
We were ecstatic. I mean, it truly was utopic. We had control artistically. It was free room and board with a salaried position. We controlled our schedule. As long as we proved that we were competent and being responsible, we were left untouched. Nobody was overseeing us. So that put a higher level of responsibility on us, to take care of everything, to make certain nobody would have recourse to question what we were doing in terms of just commitment or quality. But again, we ended up, after 7 years, disbanding. And it was simply because we decided we wanted to have lives outside of that experience, families. And it just felt like time to move on. And it wasn't bittersweet. It was very celebratory. And we are all great friends. We've seen each other multiple times since then. Our kids play together. But it was one of those things where we recognized there's no other way we're going to be able to duplicate this experience in the world. Yellowstone, moose, snow in July, grizzly bears, bison, and people coming to listen to us like crazy all the time and really being happy artistically. Where are we going to find that again? We didn't have to cook. It was free room and board. It was the best situation out there.
But one of the things you said a moment ago, Michael, well, it sounds amazing, and I would love to do that. But you said you didn't have a sense of what it took to be the business of a string quartet.
Right, not at all. We took care of programming, and we thought we were really astute and sophisticated, and every once in a while we would just play at a town that was outside of the park.
And the nearest town was
90 or 120 miles away.
Right,
Jackson Hole or Cody, Wyoming, or West Yellowstone or Bozeman.
Yeah.
Or even we did a whole big trek up to Helena, Montana, which was about a 4.5 hour drive each way or something crazy. But we thought that was really great for us. But again, we were young. We didn't understand the need to display what we had been working so hard to achieve to others outside of that ecosystem. And that's really what had happened. We'd become part of that ecosystem and self-contained.
So was this partly an aversion to the risk of what it takes?
I think it was more of the fact that we didn't know what questions to properly ask of ourselves.
Well, if you could go back, what would have been the questions that you should have been asking?
Well, we should have been asking ourselves, what do we want to see our quartet doing in the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years? What do we want to feel proud of having done to further the reach of our audiences, to further the reach of how we could travel more and present more, to not just, and I'm a big dreamer, thinker and dreamer now, so like to perform in Europe, to perform in Asia, to get out there instead of just, and probably the utopic aspect did make us play safe, because it was, to get out of that. And I've discovered that playing it safe in any creative field is actually detrimental to your art making.
Okay, so now you've introduced...
That's really what I need to say to our listening audience. If you are in a position in which you feel safe, that's actually not where you want to be.
Let's dig into that, because you just introduced this new phrase that you weren't using a few minutes ago, playing it safe. So the quartet didn't know the questions to ask, and that was a business thing, as you interpret it. Playing it safe. Does that mean you get comfortable and you don't take risks? Well, I'll let you define that.
Well, we didn't realize it at the time, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
We didn't take risks, professional risks. I'm not talking about artistic risks. We did that all the time.
You were playing Shock 8. I mean, come on.
And commissioning.
Right.
And so it wasn't about artistically playing it safe. It was the fact that we were not professionally seeking danger. We were not taking chances to put ourselves out there.
Okay.
So what should we have been doing? We should have been saying within a year, we should try to seek engagements in multiple states and multiple cities. And 2, we should have been trying to get on concert series. We should be seeking some kind of recording representation because of all the repertoire we had. We should have been seeking the ability to collaborate with other artists, maybe a clarinetist, and do some quintets, or a guitarist, or a vocalist. Commissioning even further people and bigger names, not just individuals that were close and that we were aware of in that region right there. And touring internationally. And then building a legacy of helping younger quartets, helping the next generation of musicians. Starting an outreach program where we build programs for multiple week-length stays, residencies in elementary schools or high schools, things of that nature.
So knowing what you know now and the experience about playing it safe, how have you taken that idea and applied it into the other areas of your life as a musician? And I'm talking about, you framed this all as a business discussion. How have you been taking risks and not playing it safe, and how has that paid off for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Being a violist, I quickly learned outside of the confines of the quartet or playing in a symphony, you have to make your own opportunities.
Amen.
You do not have people walking down the street saying, man, I really wish there was a viola recital tonight right here in my neighborhood, right?
Well, most of the people in your neighborhood don't know what a viola is.
Don't know. Well, my neighborhood may be a little different because they know that I'm here. They hear me practicing all the time. But you're right. The awareness of the viola is not there. And, it's not so much that I want it to be militaristic and say, yay, 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 viola. The world is all about viola. It's not that. That just is that's the larynx that I speak through.
Right.
So it's about how can I take the music I love and present that more and create more opportunities to perform, to engage with students in schools, to commission more. And that's really what I ended up doing. I just started by simply asking a really pretty well-known composer, if she would write a piece for me. So I live in the neighborhood of Hyde Park in Chicago. It's right next to the University of Chicago. And one of my first big breaks was taking the chance and going over to the University of Chicago and talking to the conductor of the new music ensemble there, Barbara Schubert, who, for those of you who don't know who that is, this is somebody you need to know. She's worked, a woman conductor. She's been at the University of Chicago for over 40 years, okay? At a time in which nobody was hiring or talking about the issues that we talk about today with women being in positions of conductors. And she's been doing it with great strength for decades, programming being super adventurous. And I asked her, well, I really love Alfred Schnitger's music. And he wrote this a piece called Monologue for Viola and String Orchestra. And would you ever consider programming it? And I asked it rather that innocently. And, she thought about it for a little while. And she saw what I was doing at that time, just freelancing in Chicago, doing whatever I could because I was new to the city. And she said, sure.
Wow.
She took a chance. She said yes. And we rehearsed it, performed it, and to my great luck, there were some wonderful composers in that audience that heard me do that piece. And it turned out to be the U.S. premiere of the Schnitger monologue, actually. We didn't even realize it at the time. But, the person that was in the audience that intrigued me the most was Marta Patinska.
Okay.
She has taught at Indiana University, Cleveland Institute of Music. She has a lot of compositions for marimba, but also full orchestra and a myriad of chamber ensembles. And she's on the faculty of the University of Chicago, Marta Patinska. And I did the same thing. I just said, well, this worked. I took a chance. I just blindly asked Barbara Schubert if I could perform. So I walked into Marta Patinska's office, her teaching studio. And before I could even ask her the question, would she consider writing a piece and taking a commission from me? She asked me. She said, I heard you play the Schnitger the other day. How about I write a piece for you?
Wow.
Yes. And this is somebody who back in Poland is considered still one of the top 2 and 3 Polish composers in the world. And I was just starstruck by her. And when she said that, absolutely flabbergasted. Just, I didn't know how to respond other than act like a fanboy and almost literally jump up and down. So she started working on a piece. And just a couple weeks after she was almost, she was getting close to being done with it, solo piece, Pope John Paul II died. Polish, right?
Yeah.
She grew up on the same block as him. She remembers him being the older teenager when she was a young little girl, walking down the center of the street with his arms straight out, 2 kids on each leg, and 2 children on each arm hanging with his arms straight out. And he was an athlete. His aspiration was to become either an actor or a gymnast when he grew up. Super energetic. When he passed away, she completely put aside what she had been working on and wrote a brand new piece from that point forward. And it became this acrobatic / elegiac memorial piece to Pope John Paul II. Sure. And that was the first major piece that was written for me. And once that happened, and the commitment that she had and the visceral energy, I was hooked.
Sure.
I've got to do this again.
And that all started because you took a risk of blindly approaching someone you had never met before.
Yes. And long story short,
and
yes.
making an ask, right? Okay, so
absolutely, twice, 2 of those. The one small, the small ask of asking to write it for the concerto performance led to me going to ask, and they asked me. You have no idea what's going to happen.
You don't.
But you will not have any of those experiences if you don't take risks. That was my lesson.
Now you have your doctorate, you teach, you're really plugged into the new music community. 52 commissions, 8 more on the way. Do you see this risk aversion and playing it safe within our community of new music?
You mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is something that plays out in any industry or any discipline.
Sure, absolutely.
So for me to say that in new music that it's not there, I would, that would be erroneous. That would be wrong, of course. In new music, there are some big issues that I think that fall victim to play safe, categorized into play safe. And some of them are rather contentious. For me, one of them is, I think it's playing safe when you only compose for other composers.
Yeah, yes.
I'm 100%. Really sorry. I know that's going to get a lot of people angry, but I don't like the alienating aspect of that. And I just want to get as many people involved as possible without diluting the artistic merit of anything, of course. But I feel that if you and I only had conversations with each other because we have like-minded opinions, what kind of life is that? Right. We're not sharing anything. We're not actually being influenced by outside acts, outside opinions. We're not growing. And every day I put my head on the pillow at the end of the day, I'm hoping that I have changed from the moment I picked my head off of the pillow that morning. I don't want to be the same person. That's a wasted day if I'm the same person when I go to sleep as when I woke up. So I view the chances, at times whenever, and it's not just composing for each other, it's also performing only for each other. Mm-hmm. Performing only for people who love new music already very, very strongly. We have to take chances and get out to people who don't know yet that they like new music. People don't know if they like something if they don't know it exists. And it's a very old-fashioned cliche, but it's so true. You have to let people know it even exists before they can even make a judgment whether they like it or not.
So besides
take a risk,
getting risk and putting our music out in front of people, which is always risky because there's a fear of rejection. There's a fear that...
Yeah, but that's why being in the creative arts are so fantastic.
Yeah.
If you knew it was safe, what's the thrill? What's the inspiration? What's the motivation? Why do it? I'm washing the dishes. Sure, you might cut your hand, you might not, but it's a safe thing. What's the thrill seeking in that? You feel alive when you create a field because there is the opportunity for failure too, not just success.
So what are some other things that and the audience here is composers, what could composers do to increase our ability to take risks? Like simple things we could tweaks in our mindset or actions we can put ourselves on today to get us used to that idea of potentially failing?
Get out of your normal sphere of social crowd. Hang around a coffee shop at a different part of town. Hang out at a school.
And this doesn't mean just sitting in the coffee shop and drinking your coffee.
Engage.
Right.
Engage.
Yeah.
Don't just watch the wall, just watch people coming in and out. Talk to people. Get out. Studs Terkel is a great example of this. Many people may not know who Studs Terkel was, but he was a Chicago historian. And actually, there's going to be an opera about him very soon coming out. But Studs Terkel is one of the foremost oral historians of the 20th century. And he would just buy a bus ticket in Chicago and ride the bus all day long and just talk to people. Just find out what their story was. Instead of trying to define himself, he was actually seeking out what other people were doing so he could maybe incorporate, not just learn their histories and tell that again to the next generation, but also just curiosity. Really, that's it. Are you a curious person? And that's the way he lived out his curiosity. He talked and met people. Composers, you have to be curious instead of trying to only prove who you already are. There's no curiosity in trying to prove who you are already, is there? I'm not a psychologist, so I'm asking that question even at the same time that I'm stating it. I'm wondering myself. But, to prove yourself, is that truly seeking? Is that asking to incorporate and to grow? Right. Or is that defending? I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Now we're getting a little too deep, maybe.
Oh, I like that.
But I think it's important for composers to question a whole lot more and take chances. Get out, meet community. Also, try to get your pieces programmed outside of the normal venues.
Okay, give me a real-world example of that. What does that mean?
Don't live and wait for your pieces to be only presented at universities or on fully established concert series already, even if they're new music series. Get out, play in schools. Get out, organize a concert at a church, at a community center in your area, at maybe a summer festival that's like a beer festival or the raisin festival in your town, whatever it is, wherever people are gathering, a place where people are familiar with meeting at, make it a music location. Don't wait for one to appear. So you're fabricating what's already in your community already. And there are some great examples of that, right, in the world. Classical Revolution has been doing this for a while. They've been going into venues that traditionally don't see art music, new music, classical music even. But in Europe, my goodness, and I see this a lot in Asia, actually, because there are not a lot of concert halls. There will be concerts in restaurants. There will be concerts in schools. There will be concerts at warungs. Warungs are just food stalls along the side of the road.
Really?
Yes. So it's actually just, do you want to make this happen or not? That's really what it comes down to. Are you going to make this happen instead of waiting for somebody to give you the right to have?
So who's responsible for making it happen, Michael?
You are.
You are.
You are. And the maybe one of the dangers, and I fell victim to this, is waiting for somebody to tell you you've arrived.
That was what I believed for a long time.
Yeah.
I was waiting for someone to stamp me on the forehead and say, you are now a composer. And that means you will get performances and commissions because
I think that's for most of us, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for other people, but that was part of the motivation of continuously going to grad school. It's like, well, I haven't become enough yet. Mm-hmm. But you have you heard the statement? Be, do, have, right? You have to become before you can do, before you can have, right? Like I had to believe and become and act like a composer before I really was a composer. And I had reversed that.
Yeah, but what does that mean, right?
Yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hard.
And are you going to try to fit yourself into a stereotype? Or worse, the mythological view of what a composer is that never really truly existed, right?
Yeah, right.
That loner kind of beat down, emotional, like subjected individual.
By him or herself, alone in their apartment,
yes,
writing music, tortured for their artistic expression.
And we can find examples of that. But there are very few. And why we don't want to be the exception. What is the thing that actually gets music out there?
Action.
Right? For more people than anything, action.
Yeah. And then the myth of the starving artist too. I think that started at the same time with this romantic ideal of the artist as demigod, right? And the creator is the most important person, the composer, right? Like Beethoven struggling.
Well, people do struggle. This is true, right? And many of us are struggling out there. There's different, but the starving artist as the aspiration,
right? Like
that to be considered a serious artist, you have to be struggling and starve. That's the only way you can be serious. No, that's not something that we need to perpetuate. But there are younger individuals, more so there, because they haven't seen enough mentors yet. And they haven't seen enough of their peers, because you're young, you don't have a lot of peers having a lot of success, that you don't have to be that struggling, starving artist. You can be jovial, you can be giddy, you can be curious, you can make mistakes and fall on your face and get up and try again, right? You don't have to wait for perfection.
You don't.
Or approval.
Let's talk about one of the biggest risks you've taken recently. Your Bandung Orchestra.
Yeah.
What? An orchestra in Indonesia? Okay.
Well, this is what everybody dreams of doing, right?
Well, you're taking this European tradition, you're importing it to Southeast Asia, but it's so much more than that. Because they're not all playing our big dead white European composers, right?
No, not at all.
Well, I'll just let you tell the story. How did this come about to begin with?
Well, the summer of 2015, a colleague of mine was contacted by a friend in Indonesia and said, we really don't have anything going on here. All of my friends, we envy the fact that you have all these recitals and concerts going on. You know, that Michael has 80 or 90 recitals a year that he's playing in new music. We study in Europe and at the Central Conservatory in Beijing. We come back to Indonesia and all we can find are pickup situations. No security, and with respect to venues, no kind of regular performance series at all. What do? So they end up leaving or going on to something beyond or different than music. So we decided to start an orchestra. And it would be foolish of me to take full credit of this. The person that has been the brunt of this, her name is Irene Efren, and she's the executive director, chief officer. She has more energy than almost anybody I've ever met. But she brought Robert Nordling and myself on board. Robert is the music director, and we're co-artistic directors. And that was July of 2016, right?
Okay.
Or 15, July of 2015. January, first week of 2016, 6 months later, we fly to Indonesia. Okay, this is only 6 months after just the idea of should we do this. We hold 3 days straight auditions. We seat the entire orchestra in 3 days. Fourth day, we have our first rehearsal. The eighth day we're there, we have our first performance.
Oh my gosh.
So this is just a tiny bit over 6 months. We go from this concept not even being in the world to having our first sold out concert. And a community fully invigorated into this idea. So it's the first professional orchestra in Indonesia. So that means
not just the first, the only.
Yes, professional orchestra. And how do you define that? We define that by the fact that our auditions were blind. There's no seniority base. You know this person and that person, or you teach at this university, or you've done this. No. Come in, play these prescribed excerpts we've asked of you, and you're going to be evaluated behind a screen. Yeah. The other thing is the first orchestra with full contracts for an entire year. They know all of the dates and all of the repertoire and exactly what chair they're going to be seated in for the duration of the year. And I know that sounds very standard and financial, right? It's guaranteed what you're going to be paid for that entire time. And it's already the highest paying performing institution in Indonesia, rather. Yeah.
So since we're framing this discussion in light of taking risks, what were the risks involved with this?
Many. Just the whole idea is Indonesia ready for this? Are they going to welcome Western art music? Are they going to welcome two Americans coming in to help facilitate this? Are we going to be viewed as imperialistic, fools? Are we going to, and then not even considering the political environment that we have been in for the last, since September 11th, but even longer than that, literally because Indonesia is the largest Islamic country in the world. Many Americans don't realize that. It's outside of the Mideast, but there are 241 million people there. It's the fourth largest country on the planet by population, just behind the United States. How are we going to be welcomed in that environment, let alone as classical musicians, doing something very European? So we decided that we wanted to make certain that it wasn't an American orchestra in Indonesia. So a couple things we've decided to implement. We commission and premiere a brand new piece on every concert from an Indonesian composer.
That's great.
Yeah. So we're trying to establish or create the opportunity for an Indonesian orchestral canon, even though I don't really want to use that word, but a repertoire of Indonesian orchestral music for Western orchestra. We also have a conductor fellowship program, training the next generation of conductors. So someday they won't need us, right? They can be fully independent, autonomous, and fully Indonesian functioning ensemble. We also have an educational program that I'm in charge of using Howard Gardner's concepts of multiple intelligence.
Right.
Help design this program going into multiple schools to teach, using music as the backdoor to teach history, geography, mathematics, physics, greater vocabulary skills, and yes, the building blocks of music. And we do iconographic notation with the students.
Wow.
What am I forgetting?
Well, risks.
Oh, risks. Yes, risks. Getting back to your question, thank you. I go on tangents quite easily. So the risk, I think, was, will we be received and welcomed? Will the community accept the idea of new Indonesian music? Right.
So you had to cross the hurdle about European tradition music, but you also had to cross the hurdle of a new tradition.
Will it be accepted? Yes.
Right.
Will there be an audience at all?
And what about the financial risk?
Well, oh my gosh, yes. This undertaking, because there is no granting institution, because if you make a donation to an institution for the arts, it is not tax deductible there.
There's no 501c3s.
No.
Right.
No. So everything is just altruistic. I believe that what your endeavor is trying to accomplish is worthy, and they donate out of pocket for sheer just will of hoping you the best and trust. So that trust we do not take lightly. And every day we interact with the community and with the musicians, we put that trust on the line. That's a risk. We want them to know that we are sincerely there for them. It's not about us. It's not about Robert Nordling, the conductor, or myself. We're there to facilitate and empower them to make the orchestra thrive. We've had to do everything from teaching them how to mark parts to who should mark parts, to how a section leads and mark bowings, and how the principal oboist is the leader, like the concertmaster of the wind section, and all these things. All of this has had to be introduced, even though technically there's a proficiency, but the interaction of an orchestra is different from just the execution on your instrument, right?
Right.
Other risks. Again, I touched upon that politically, that there's disagreements between our governments and our cultures. So we strive very much not to make efforts to separate or divide. In fact, we celebrate the opposite. The orchestra is comprised of Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, obviously, yes. So when you scan the entire field visually of the orchestra, you see hijabs on some of the women, not all, because it's not mandated that Islamic Muslim women have to wear a hijab, but some do. And it's just beautiful. It's just fantastic. Some of the players travel 8 hours by train each direction to get to us.
Wow. To
the rehearsal, yeah. So it's about 95% Indonesian playing, the members from Indonesia itself. And there's great risk for them too, because quite frankly, music is not held as a profession in the cultural eye there. The person that's playing guitar on the street corner, just strumming one chord and singing, is not viewed in any capacity as being different from the orchestral musicians who have trained at conservatories in our ensemble. So we're really trying to open the eyes to the entire culture of not just the repertoire, but to the worthiness of this institution and the individuals that have worked for cumulatively, hundreds of years, if you add all the years up together that they've been studying, that this is a celebration of humanity and expression and not putting our hand out for a meal.
Right. Like a busker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no distinction yet between those two. So we're still growing that awareness within the community. But the greatest risks, I think you touched upon it, are financial, as well as just sociological, that our interaction is always first and foremost of the highest caliber in respect and openness, without question. And our motives have to be for that ensemble. It can't be any other agenda other than that. It's for them.
And you had said yourself that your idea is to work yourself out of a job, right?
Well, yeah.
You're not trying to create a dependency upon your expertise or your Americanism or your money, right? Like you're not even bringing American money down there, are you?
No.
Right.
No, we haven't brought money from the U.S. there at all. And and it's all self-contained within Indonesia.
Sure.
So it's really about, let's get this started. And again, empowering that whole community, not just the players. So it's been ridiculously gratifying. And the first rehearsal when they were all together, just seeing them grow and, this is becoming a reality and remembering the quality of playing that was at that moment to what we just experienced in our last concert from the end of season 2 in September. Tears in my eyes. Just so proud of them.
Yeah.
Now playing Debussy and Brahms and new pieces by Sanjaya and Negoro Budi and Ara Widikan and Fauzi Wiryadi Zastra. I love that last name, Wiryadi Zastra. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's great. You're going to have to spell that for me because I've got no idea. But what's coming up that you're really excited about with the orchestra? What's going on?
Oh, so this is kind of surreal. I'm actually playing a concerto with the orchestra in January. This was not my intention. This all came about as kind of like a surprise in a way. The Stacey Garrop, Chicago composer here, she won this year's Barlow Prize, actually.
But who's been on the podcast?
She's a fireball of energy, and her music is too. Just strap in when you listen to her music, okay? It's incredible energy. But last year, she was granted a Barlow grant, even before she won this year's Barlow Award. And with that grant, she decided to write a concerto for me. And and it's going to be premiered in Indonesia. It's titled Krakatoa, based upon the Indonesian, volcano, the largest volcanic eruption in modern time.
That was heard around the world,
yes,
literally.
Yes, and highly destructive. Yeah, the whole island actually disappeared. It blew itself up completely off of the face of the surface of the water. But this is a joy. Stacey is fantastic. The concerto, and let me just please address the composers out there listening. As a violist, I love working with you. But as a violist, we have so many melancholy works of despondent, of tragic elegies, right? And I understand there's the quality of the voice of the viola can lend it to that very well, but there's so many other things we can do. We get tired of the typecasting.
Oh, I'm sure.
It'd be like constantly being typecast as the porter on the train.
Well, why don't we kind of...
bad, it feels like sometimes. So this piece has certainly some lyricism to it, but overall it's kinetic, it's athletic, and it's written so well, and it features the energy, vibrant energy, and explosive, yes, a volcano, right? So it's got to be explosive energy, and thank you, Stacey.
Yeah, well, we got to hear some of Stacey's music last night, her latest movement for her brass quintet.
Dionysus.
Which was appropriately drunken and amazing. It was great.
Played by the Gaudete Brass Ensemble here in Chicago.
Yeah, who commissioned the piece also. Mm-hmm. They're the ensemble. This would be a good time for us to kind of turn a corner here and talk about composer performer commissioning relationships.
Yeah, let's talk about helping them instead of me. That's a good idea. That's why we're here.
This is why we're here. And this is a question I ask every performer on the podcast, because it ends up being pretty much the same answer every time. But I think it's so important for us to realize because we forget it.
Oh, now I'm on to make certain I give the right answer.
There is no right answer here. What are some of the things that composers do that just drive you bonkers as a performer, as a commissioner? What are the things that we can do better?
Communicate through the process more often.
Okay.
I love the idea of a lot of back and forth. It's not that you have to show the performer drafts every week, but ask us what we like doing. What makes our instrument look good? What makes it look bad? Because maybe that struggle is intended at times as well, right? Mm-hmm. I like the idea of just open dialogue back and forth. Expectations from the beginning. Is there a guaranteed? Let us know if you have to have a guaranteed performance right from the onset. There should be. As a performer, I'd say I wouldn't want to commission unless there's a guaranteed performance for that. But I think the clearer each of you are at the very outset with expectations, the lesser the chances that you'll be disappointed with each other.
Sure.
And I don't mean just the piece, with each other.
Give me an example of bad communication or something that didn't go right in the process.
Oh, it can be something as simple but as powerful as deadline not being met.
And you've experienced that?
Rarely, very rarely. But when it happens, you're kind of left with now what? Because the piece you were intended to program on a specific date, on a specific recital or something. So then you have to change it, which is possible for me because I have lots of repertoire and other pieces that are, those other composers would be happy to have that additional slot, and I'm happy to perform them. But it's disappointing when that doesn't get met. I'm trying to think of some other, I try to only remember the good things, not out of delusion, but those are the things that carry you forward to continue the process as opposed to holding on to the bad things. But it is good to know what to be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
Financially, you have to be upfront. Do you want installment payments? Do you want all of it upfront? Do you want half now? Do you want half when it's finished?
And you can stipulate that on the contract.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
all of those are viable options. And other ones, of course, are, all of you know this most likely, if it's not an exchange of actual cash, in exchange for a guaranteed set of number of performances, or even performance at a prestigious location. Something like that can be in lieu of, for instance, composers are really excited when I premiere a piece in Asia, in Bangkok or anywhere, yeah? So, but open dialogue is so important, and especially when you're having trouble. Mm. When you're having trouble, if you're having a block, if you're just not feeling it, let us know. Okay, well, let's put the piece and that endeavor aside for 6 months. Don't work on it, or a year, or whatever. There's no real hurry. I want you, the composer, to be really convinced of what you wrote and happy with it, as opposed to just, oh, good, met the deadline and throw it out there.
Can we talk about the performance thing? Because one of the great frustrations as a composer is you just had this wonderful opportunity to write for a performer or an ensemble, and it's a farewell premiere. As a performer and as someone who actively commissions, what's your opinion on that?
Just doing one performance and that's it, you mean?
And then the piece is dead.
That's a disservice to everything in the whole process.
Right.
Maybe the reason I love the idea of more communication is because that is the heart of the experience. That back and forth, that exchange of ideas, that friendship, that exchange of ideas. So you help me grow, right? As not just a player, but as a person. I seek that. And sometimes I wonder if I'm in music so much as just as a way to like satisfy my thirst of curiosity to meet more people too, because music has been able to grant the power of travel and meeting. But with getting back to your question, without that meeting, it becomes an exchange all the time. It becomes rather purposeless almost. It becomes you're executing the piece, as opposed to the first performance is two things. One, this is our game plan that we've talked about and worked on for a long time. Does it work? Does it work in front of people? Does it unfold the way we were hoping to? Or maybe a different way, but is it a satisfactory, is it a pleasing and satisfactory statement? Two, it's a celebration, quite frankly, that premiere of all of that work. That's really what the first performance is. But we all know that first performance, while as hard as it is to get, it's not nearly as hard as 2 and 3 or 10. Or, as in some cases, like Mara Gibson's pieces he's written for me, one of them I've played 50 some times.
Really?
And Jim Moberly's piece I've played 38 times. Matthew Bertner's piece I've played 20 sometimes. Ki Young Chung, a composer that all of you need to know, a Malaysian composer, Ki Young Chung, 3 separate words. I played his piece over 60 times. Temple Bell Still Ringing in My Heart. It's just, nothing else like it in my repertoire. And it makes a big statement. Even though it's only 3.5 or 4 minutes long, it's a piece people remember. But it's because we've had exchange. We've had impactful experiences. We've gone to the top of a mountain in Thailand to a Buddhist temple and had these like visceral experiences emotionally and physically of being there and sharing. And that's just an extreme example. But, that first performance, you better get more than one performance given of a piece you commission, because otherwise you're failing that composer.
So
that's my view.
As composers, should we ask for multiple performances in our contract? Sometimes that's not an option, right?
Sometimes it's not, especially if it's an orchestral piece, right? Can you guarantee that a community orchestra or a high school orchestra or a regional orchestra will play it multiple times? You don't have control over that. And that's not a practice. You don't see a regional orchestra or any orchestra, rather, playing Beethoven 5 multiple times during the year, even as an example of that.
It's one concert.
So what you could do to solve that, of course, is the consortium commissioning, or getting a group of people to perform it each one time at minimum. That's, of course, one way to do that. But you're going to have much more success with the smaller the ensemble that you're writing for, the more performances you'll have most likely in a shorter amount of time. It just makes sense for practicality, right?
Yeah.
When I'm playing solo recitals, I can pull things out at a moment's notice. If somebody called me now and asked if I could play a recital this evening someplace, I could choose from any one of like 40 or 50 pieces and just, okay, let's put this together for the occasion. And maybe even change it during the night when I see whatever reaction is going on.
Right, yeah.
Right?
You read the room.
Exactly. But you need to curate your choice of commissions. We don't all have that luxury, because you get a commission, you're excited. But when you get to a point where you can choose somebody over another person, somebody who is noted for only doing one and done, or is not interested in that exchange back and forth, just write the piece and I'll perform it. That does not sound exciting, although we do have all of those, and I understand the need for that. And it's part of the exchange too. Some people don't want that interaction, and I can appreciate that. But if you have the choice between one that doesn't communicate and is going to do it once, and one that is going to live that piece through them for you, obviously which one you're going to choose. It is. How can you encourage that? I don't know if you can. You can't really mandate that somebody perform. You can try to stipulate that in a contract, guarantee. Maybe you can consider lowering the commission fee a certain percentage with each guarantee of a performance ahead of time.
Well, that's a thought.
Right.
So you could create a scale.
Exactly. One that after you sign is set, okay? Because you don't want the conditions to change after that, because then you're at the mercy, plus or negative, you never know.
Right.
But, if your normal fee is X for one performance, you're going to guarantee 2 or 3, maybe you have a certain 3 or 5% lessening of the commission fee, or I don't know what would be reasonable for that.
Well, that's a totally brand new thought to me.
Food for thought, yeah?
Yeah.
Incentive to perform it more often, in other words.
There's, incentive,
the frequent
right?
flyer miles version of commissioning.
Well, have you read Freakonomics?
Yes.
Stephen Levitt's book, University of Chicago
University of Chicago,
Economist.
right here,
and
my
his
neighbor.
whole he says at the opening of that book and in their podcast, economics is about incentives. What motivates people to do one thing over the other? And this is true in how we do music. It's not just about money, but here we are. What's the incentive for the performer to do this? And that's one way we can provide incentives. I mean, the guy who won the Pulitzer Prize for economics this year was all about nudge-based economics, right? So we want people to smoke less. Well, let's increase the taxes on cigarettes. that's nudging behavior.
A detriment incentive.
Or it's a detriment, but it's incentive, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so we can, I mean, that's a negative example. I could have picked a much more positive one.
But it makes the point very clearly.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm sure there's maybe some drawbacks to that plan I haven't thought out, but it seems like it's some possibilities to consider.
It's a possibility. We're thinking about this out loud.
And again, thinking outside of the box. If it's not working for you, try something different. Right? Just that's why we're both in creative field. It's why we're both very fortunate, and we're also very razor thin terrified, because the responsibility is all on us.
There's no one else who's going to make it happen. And no one cares as much about your music as you do.
Most likely.
Tell me a story, Michael, about...
Although we try as hard as we can to match them.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's a piece written for you, you'll probably care a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I just presented you with my latest viola sonata, you don't care about it as much as I do.
I would give it every heart moment possible, thought and attempt, though.
You would. Tell me, I want two stories.
Yes.
I want a story about a commissioning process that went awry. What was the most terrible experience you ever went through? You do not have to name names. And then I want you to give me the opposite.
I think I've been very fortunate to only have had one.
Okay.
And it was an experience of which I worked through. It was very loose, and it was early on in my commissioning endeavors. Contractually, nothing problem there. When I got the piece, it was 32 pages long, no page turns, and it would be like revving your car at 10,000 RPMs for the duration.
Oh my gosh.
So, I'm not the kind of person that likes to back down. I'm not like that. I really try to make things work. If a composer is writing something out and they put it on paper, it's not just about trying to be truthful to that. They've had an idea, and I want to see if that idea works. It's not my idea. Let's see if this new idea could work. I could just not get past page 5 of this without my body just being angry at me. And I was worried about the longevity of my career. And I've got how many more pages? I've got 27 more pages of this. And I just couldn't. So I tried tactfully to raise this with the composer. And my concerns were just not being appreciated, it felt like, because there was no compromise. This is my piece. This is my vision. This, because of the structure, because of all of this mathematical, which I appreciate, but on the scale and physical dimensions that it was being asked to be executed on, it was just not physically possible for me. I could not do it without jeopardizing my body. And I honestly don't think I could have gotten through it. It would be like doing an ultra marathon 3 times. So wow. That's the only time I've ever had a piece with commission activated and a full score setting before me in which I did not perform it. The only time. And it still hasn't been performed.
What could have prevented that? Openness, willingness?
Yes, both. An appreciation for what a performer that you're writing the piece for and their concerns. And, it's not about placating fully. It's not like trying to make it easier. It's trying to make it realistic. And I really say that in the truest sense. I think all of us can appreciate 32 pages without page turns of nonstop physical engagement at 10,000 RPMs. Is maybe there's somebody out there can do that. And I shouldn't undercut the ability to be performed someday. I'm just not that person that could do that because I know I'd be jeopardizing my career. Physically, it hurt. And I've never had pain ever playing other than that time.
Well, you don't want to hurt yourself.
No, so I would have, what would I have wished had happened? That he would have taken consideration of the physical limitations that I could offer his piece. That there could have been some kind of truncation, of course. 32 pages, timed out, it was 41 minutes.
Of constant playing.
Because what I did not mention are the repeats that were within the parts.
What?
Okay, so yes.
And I'm also imagining this on a stage. I've seen performances, even with you, where you've had 6 stands in a row. Mm-hmm. But on an average of 2.5 pages per stand, we're talking 14 to 16 stands in a row.
We're talking
and
a
you're
visual
walking
barrier
all the
that
way
is
across the stage.
absurd, comical.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like if you're going to do a satire and a spoof on the need of too many stands, and we've all been there. Sometimes you just have to do it.
Sometimes you have to.
But this would have been like a Monty Python skit.
Oh,
except triage would have been needed shortly, physically. So that is probably without question, my worst experience engaging with the composer, because we left both of us disappointed. We're on speaking terms, but I know that he's just still extremely angry at me for not performing the piece. So, but I don't know what could I have done, Garrett. I couldn't have played the piece. This is what would have happened. In an attempt to perform the piece in public, I would have broken down most likely. It would not have been anywhere close to, physically I would have broken down. I would not be representing anything close to what he was asking of the piece. Right? So where would the reward be there for him, for that composer? So please, composers, develop an awareness for what is a reasonable request on technical limitations, physical limitations of the engagement of a musician with their instrument as well. Certainly there are some questions and requests that are unfair. For instance, if you have a performer say on a string instrument that they just don't want to do harmonics, that's a silly request. I'm sorry. Harmonics, circular bowing, some other techniques they should be standard fare. Okay, that should be a technique that they can do. Unless you're talking, of course, about writing a piece for a very young, and it's intentionally a learning piece for a pedagogical concerns. That's a different nature, of course.
There's still a right way to get into and out of the harmonics that's not going to be physically possible.
Yes. And of course, there are the other things like just notating or indicating a harmonic incorrectly. But that's different from being asked not to include harmonics in a piece or anything that would be different. I do know somebody that commissions and they want nothing in their piece that would be different from the techniques required to play a Brahms sonata or something. So no scordatura, no ponticello.
But it's not 1850 anymore.
Yeah. But in other words, just make wise choices of who you're working with. Make wise choices and informed choices as to what that person can physically do. Sure. And when questions are raised to you, please take them into consideration. Yes, that's really it. And then seek advice. Seek advice from other composers, other performers on that instrument. Is this a reasonable request? And it's not malicious. It's not subversive. It's just trying to triangulate what is the norm or what is acceptable, physical limitations. Maybe that's the more appropriate. Because even if you're pushing the boundaries and it's not the norm, what is acceptable? Right? I can rev my car up to 6,000 RPMs every once in a while. You better not sustain it there, of course. But I can get up there. And 10,000, on my body, I could do that for durations. Not for this long. So that was, without question, the most disappointing. And still, I'd be lying if I wouldn't say that it was emotionally scarring, too.
Yeah, I bet.
Successful ones you were asking about, though.
Yeah, I guess, go there. And then I'll follow up.
Oh, this is easy.
Okay.
Because I have so many of them. Maybe
just choose one.
Mara Gibson.
Okay.
She's written 4 pieces for me. She knows what kind of things that my body, how they like to move. She's watched me play so many times that she knows just how my body likes to transition between things even. So it's almost like a choreographer studying their ballet dance troupe and understanding what strengths each lead dancer brings to that and choreographing an entire ballet around that person and their skill set. So it feels wonderful. When she hands me a new score, I feel like, oh, I know this already. Because it's my body kind of unfolding in that nature.
Yeah,
it is really wonderful when you develop that kind of rapport with the composer.
Okay, so there's a word you just used, rapport. And I think the problem with the really negative experience you had was communication. And another part of your relationship with Mara is that there's an intimate knowledge enough so that she knows what you can do and what you like to do, what's possible. And what this all means, you put this all together, is relationship, right?
first and foremost.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this comes up over and over and over again in the podcast. We're in a relationship business. It doesn't matter if you're writing for the largest of ensembles or the solo player. But when it gets to this solo individual, I think the relationship becomes even more critical. And you've told me that you receive pieces in the cold from composers who have heard, oh, there's this new music guy in Chicago, and he's performed these pieces 60 times. I'm going to get him one of mine.
Yeah, it's really, it's incredibly humbling. And there's a great deal of appreciation and respect for what's happening. But it's not just receiving pieces from them. They've written a piece and dedicated a piece for me. And there was a time when I was getting, there was a string of 4 months where I received 2 a month in the email. And I'm trying to, go back in my mind and think what event just prior to that really inspired them. But yes, this happens, and it's both incredibly exciting and terrifying at the same time. Mm-hmm. Exciting because you realize that you inspired somebody to do this and motivated them to dedicate all of that creative energy and skill that they have and passion towards doing this. But terrifying because it's almost like an arranged marriage. You don't know who this person is, but you're asked to have an intimate interaction with that person, with that composer. It's exactly like an arranged marriage to me.
Wow.
So it's terrifying with that respect. And of course, like arranged marriages, some do develop a love and growth and respect and a longevity, and some do not. And in every case that I have received a piece from a composer in those cases, I have performed them. It doesn't mean that I perform them on big stage and presentations. Sometimes there will be something as simple. I need to try it out in front of a metabolic audience, right? So I will sometimes go to my daughter's classes, or sometimes I'll go to a school or a center or play for my students in a just pulled together recital event. Let's all play together. And it gets a hearing, and we try it out in public as at least metabolic objects, right?
How many times have you taken these pieces that you've received cold and then gone back to the composer to try to open the dialogue? It's like, okay, well... Oh,
a couple of times.
Right? And then does a relationship come from that, and there's an openness and willingness that to make the modifications that'll make that piece really special?
Not in the same way.
Okay.
Not in the same way. It's almost like trying to change that's not a fair... I was going to say it's almost like trying to change the ingredients of an already baked cake. But it's not really that stuck. But in the experiences I've had, there hasn't been so much willingness to adapt the pieces. So there can be. I should say that. I'm not saying that there can't be, and there isn't the possibility. There can be, but there was maybe not the willingness, or maybe, and if this is my fault, I'd take the responsibility. Maybe it was that they didn't see that I was going to be performing it as often. Or maybe they were sensing my anxiety about having seen it. I don't know. I can't get into their minds. But whatever it is, maybe it was my shortcoming in not being able to convince them to change it and adapt and maybe make it something that was 1 + 1 = 3 instead of just, what they did without knowing me or seeing me.
But we can't be everywhere. I can't be in all the cities to meet all the people that I want to write for. So how can an Indonesian composer who's never met you before develop the relationship? How do we do this?
We're living in the time where this is the easiest to do in human history. Okay. I could pick up my phone sitting right here, and at this very second, just WhatsApp any number of the composers that I've worked at in Indonesia instantly, let alone Skyping, right? And any other form of video communication back and forth with instant audio and everything. So there really is no excuse for that anymore. There isn't. In fact, that's one of the best and easiest ways. It's so cheap, right? So when I'm working with the composers from Indonesia, there's a dialogue back and forth, routine dialogue, and it's welcome. So yes, please do not use the fact that somebody is living someplace else as an excuse. if you want to make it happen, do it. Use all the things that are at your fingertips right in front of us every single day. That phone, every one of us paid a whole lot of money for that phone. Put it to good use. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Now I'm becoming a father telling everybody what to do.
Well, that's okay. We need to hear it. I lost my train of thought though. and this whole thing can start with an email, right?
Oh yeah. The simplest thing, an email of inquiry, an email of introduction. And that email include a link to your website. All of you should have a website out there without question, no matter what level you're at, get a website. Represent yourself out there. It is the digital business card. And it's more than that. It's actually better than a business card. You can put samples of your pieces on there. You can put photographs. You can put reviews. You can put anything on that. But get yourself out there. But that first email should just be excitement, energy, the reason why you want to initiate a dialogue back and forth. You either heard that person or you heard of or through a recommendation from someone, It just gives context,
right?
A sense of familiarity to initiate the conversation. And again, to develop a relationship.
And have a conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
You meet someone on the sidewalk, how would you greet them?
Right.
You meet someone on the digital and you want to work with them, how are you going to meet them? It's not very different.
Right. What's something, Michael, that you always wanted to talk about, but no one ever asks you?
Oh, gosh. Oh man. So this is going to seem maybe petty to everybody, but okay, because I'm a violist, right? Don't discount the viola. We're the butt of so many jokes. We're discarded so readily, so easily. And I'm not really against jokes and making fun of certain positions because it's also a reality check. A humility check as well. But I will say this, when, those jokes and disparaging remarks or deleting a viola or a violist from an activity or an engagement occurs, think about, replace the word viola with any other race or ethnicity and tell me how acceptable that would be in society, let alone how that would impact that person of that race or ethnicity, right? So it's not so much that a joke or two here hurts, it's the propagation that the jokes persist so long that becomes the perceived reality. And that becomes an identity even for a younger violist. Many young violists, I have to convince them that you deserve to stand out there in front of that ensemble and perform. You deserve to go out and ask a composer to write a piece for you. You deserve to work your ass off to practice to get a position to make an impact in your field. Yet constantly they're derided as the go-to joke at the water cooler, the proverbial water cooler, even the digital one, right? So I'm, again, not saying cast out all jokes, but when that becomes your go-to, always, that's when it becomes a problem, I think, for me. So because it really does have an impact on people. And actually, if you just think about it, what sense does that make in your ensemble to constantly be making fun of the part?
Right.
Of your ensemble? Like, you're either in this all together or you're not. It's not about you as an individual. It's like us. Always us. Creativity involves us. No matter how much we like to think each one of us is a brainchild, every thought we have is being inspired by something else that we're adapting from. Mm-hmm. So we owe a whole lot to mentors and pioneers that have gone before us. And when we're out there trying to convincingly execute an idea, we need all of us to be at the top of our game, believing in what we're doing and convincing that audience. You don't need any second guessing or believing that you're a second-class citizen of that ensemble. So I've never understood that derisive kind of treatment. It goes way back. So you asked me what bothers me. So I opened up about it. And yes, it could be petty to non-violists, but just know that it does have an impact. It's the glue that binds all the other stuff together. Take the French horn, the clarinet, and the viola out of an ensemble. And you have the high and lows.
That's it.
Right.
Yep.
So what are you swinging around? You need a sun to orbit around.
Are you equating yourself with
No. just that binding. There's a gravitational force that has in the middle part that allows things to be identified as the low or the high. It's like you need light and dark, right? You define yourself in opposition to other things, in contrast. So you need those other forces there in strength and contrast. Obviously, everybody knows that. I'm stating the obvious. Sorry.
Yeah, no surprises. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about today?
Take chances. Don't ever let somebody tell you you're not worthy of doing it. Because jealousy sometimes plays a role in those kind of statements, right? Don't become jealous yourself and fight against everything about becoming jaded. Don't ever become a jaded musician. Can I tell a quick story about that?
Yes, please.
When I was an undergraduate, I was waiting for somebody to come out of their lesson. And while there, the spouse of the teacher came up. And this person was a well-known musician in a major orchestra, very prominent person. And at that time, as an undergrad, I'm looking up to this person in awe, of course. This is somebody that's gone through the fire and has, on the other side, in my mind's view, achieved everything, right, at that time. So asking questions, seeking advice, kind of, feeling. And I asked, what do you listen to? 'Cause I know you drive a lot. What do you listen to? And the response, I will never forget this, was, I don't listen to music. And I was speechless for a moment. Like, well, wait, you love music, right? I'm thinking in my head, I couldn't reproach her in any way because I just didn't think it was possible at that time with my age. But I'm thinking, how could you not love the very thing that has given you the ability to travel the world and do all of these incredible discoveries emotionally and physically and cognitively? And, she followed by saying, every time I hear music, all I do is analyze it. I can't. Either, in the execution, the playing, I could do it better, or that was better, or the structure, or the harmony. And so I just don't listen to music. So I just, from that point, I thought, what a great lesson she just accidentally gave me. I don't ever want to become that. To me, I interpret it as being jaded.
Sure.
And today, even still, every once in a while, just remind my wife, if you ever notice me becoming jaded, taking for granted all of these things that being in music has enabled me to do, or all the gifts that it has given me, just tell me to stop.
Yeah.
Right? Because how many of us love being around people that are jaded?
Not me.
It's not the environment you want to be around. It's not inspiring so much, right? So, please fight that at all costs. I don't care what age you are. And yes, here comes Dr. Phil. If you find yourself at a point in which you're really pessimistically angry at a lot of people in your field, I do suggest that you talk through this with somebody, anybody, a friend, something, because you need to find out if that root is either jadedness or jealousy or something. Those two J's, there is no room in creativity in any creative field for the two J's. Jealousy or jadedness. You got to work through that, because the only person you're really hurting is your own art and yourself.
Yeah.
So food for thought. There's another question, a set of questions I'd love all of us to maybe contemplate. And that is, are you in love with being a musician, or do you love music? There's a really strong distinction between those. And most of the time we don't think about that. Are you in love with the mythology of being a musician? Those perceived, ideas of being on the road, of having a life that is not quite in the office and running about, and creative spirit and freedom, and whatever accolades, even if it goes all the way to the point of being, groupies and things of that nature, and fame? Or are you in love with the art form itself? Could you not live without music? That is really the question. I think every relationship I endeavor to begin, I try to assess, fairly or not, is this a person that is in love with music, or do they want the fame of being a musician? And that is really what guides me towards whether or not I'm going to work with a composer.
Wow.
So I really highly recommend everybody just, every once in a while, ask yourself that question. Do I love being a musician or do I love music? And in some parts, you can love both. But do you love being a musician more than you love music? That's where I think it raises eyebrows.
It's tremendous. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back for the lightning round. This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is Reginald Unterzehr. I am a composer, conductor, voice teacher, musician of a variety of sorts. It does absolutely everything I need. Plus, every time a new feature is released, it does it with depth and clarity that I have never seen in any programs to date. Right now, I think my favorite, I'm just finally figuring out the idea of flows. I'm deep into a multi-movement choral orchestral soloist project. And so there are certain aspects of that I had not explored at all and didn't really need. And now that I see how they work, it's going to be a tremendous help when I get into the rehearsal and distribution of scores phase and revisions phase. It just makes the way that flows are set up makes it a single document that works for all the different movements of it, and I'm loving that. The number one benefit is the fact that I believe this program has legs, that there's going to be updates that come out regularly. The team that runs it is a reliable, solid team. The people who own it are responsible and have a commitment to the musical community. This was my big problem with the platform that I left. It was like, this platform has been abandoned and I do not want to spend another cent on it. I definitely recommend Dorico. My number one thing is that it actually presents a path forward as my work continues. I am 62 years old. Learning a new program is daunting. I really like the way that the scores look. They just seem very natural. The spacings work so much better. The way that choral scores work now, the way that it works with lyrics, the way that it works with layouts. I went back to I was with a choir doing a piece that I had put together in another program 8-10 years ago. And they were asking me all kinds of questions about what is this note and what is that? Is that a tie? Is that a slur? Is that a this thing? And I was looking back at it and I was going, oh, yeah, they really fixed that problem, didn't they? Because I don't get those questions with Dorico. People look at the notes and they play the notes or sing the notes and it makes sense. They don't have to figure out what the program meant by it. I run into into problems in rehearsals oftentimes when tracking the eye across the page confuses them rhythmically. And I have not had that problem at all with Dorico. Again, it seems to be, it gets out of the way of the interface between composers' intentions and musicians' reading. Rather than introducing barriers, it removes barriers. And I like that a lot.
The kind folks at Dorico have set up a special web page so you can go and download a free 30-day trial copy of Dorico. So go and do that. I have been using the program and I'm absolutely in love with it. Go to dorico.com/TPC.
Welcome to the lightning round.
So Michael, if you could turn back the clock, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Oh my gosh. To stop comparing yourself to others in an attempt to seek validation. Because everybody's at a different point in their journey. So you just keep working hard and don't give up. Everybody wants to tell themselves that when they were younger.
Yeah.
But I think for me, when I was young, I was caught up in trying to analyze my ability to do this by comparing it by the peers around me, the peers. Which there's a healthy way of doing that. I wasn't doing it. In other words, just like triangulating.
Yeah.
Right?
But if your validation comes from an external source, you will never be satisfied.
Exactly.
Validation has to be internal.
And you know what I learned from that? Well, I'll get to that later. I think you've got a question later.
Okay,
I'll address that. But that would be it.
Sure. Let's move on to the next question. Maybe
Yes.
we'll get to it. What is a personal habit of yours that you feel leads to your success?
I'm kind of stubborn.
Yeah?
Yeah. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this.
Well, that's why we're on round 2 of this interview.
And it's also the belief that you really just need not to say bad things about people. And it's not whitewashing. It's just, let's take the best attributes of that person and let's make a meal out of that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to really talk badly about anyone.
No.
But that's not necessarily stubbornness. That's a different thing.
It is different.
So stubbornness is a stick-to-itiveness. It's gumption. It's grit. It's persistence.
It's sushi rice between your fingers and it won't come off. You're going to make this happen. This concert is going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
I told you that the story about the concert in Indonesia with the fireworks.
You did. Well, tell the story to the audience.
So as artistic director, of course, part of my responsibility is not just organizing concerts and helping fundraise an educational project. It's also making certain that the players are safe. I'm looking out for them. That's part of the job. And so we did an outdoor concert, the last one we'll probably ever do. And it was a celebration concert. 5 or 10 minutes before the concert starts, they're taping fireworks 2 feet in front of the orchestra. Fountain fireworks, like in front of the whole cello section and the first violinist. I asked, what are those? Oh, these are the fireworks. They're going off after the concert is performed, right? No, they're going off during blah, 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 second piece. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Yes, they are. They keep setting them up. I go back to the sound tech guys and I pick up, I said, do you have a set of pliers? And I took them and I just went and had a small momentary conversation with each player on the outside of the orchestra. And as we're talking and I'm kneeled down on the ground, snip, snip, snip. And I took off the ignition wires for each of those fireworks that was in front of the orchestra.
I can't believe it.
It's just not an understanding of the instruments, the value, the safety of the individuals. I don't know if OSHA is actually going to be in effect to the same standards.
Well, what OSHA?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of let's make certain that they're safe. And that's stubbornness. I was not going to jeopardize their players, even though there was a higher power politically saying so.
Yeah, that's a risk. Yeah. Now, you're a violist. But you've also told me that you grew up playing trumpet, performing jazz trumpet a lot.
Yeah, I used to play lead in a jazz band.
Yeah, and I'm in your house and I see pianos and stringed instruments and woodwind instruments everywhere. But what's an instrument you've always really wanted to learn to play and why?
You're going to laugh. Theremin.
Yeah?
Theremin. I don't know why. It's just goofy. It looks like it's full of inventive playfulness.
Uh-huh.
Yet at the same time, it requires unbelievable skill to truly master that thing.
Control.
Absolutely. So, there's accessibility right away. You can make sounds. You can make funny sounds right from the get-go. Like a piano, you can walk up right to it and make a sound, no matter how old you are. But to master it, that takes a long time. And the theremin is the same way. I've always wanted to try that and really be like a masterful theremin player.
Oh, that'd be so fun. There's a company that sells kind of a DIY build a theremin kit. And I've always wanted to buy that and build my own theremin.
Moog, down in North Carolina. I think Asheville, North Carolina.
But they sell a pre-made one, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they also sell kits now.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, pretty reasonable too.
I need to look.
I'm sorry, this was not a commercial. Just an informative kind of.
So this is often the most difficult question for people to answer. But I'm looking, Michael, for those pieces that stopped time for you. If you're anything like me, I fell in love with sound. I fell in love with music as a young person. And that's why I'm in this field. Mm. And Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys tells a story about driving around LA. This would have been in 1961-62. And Be My Baby by the Ronettes, written by Phil Spector, comes on the radio. And it's literally blowing his mind. So he has to pull the car over so he doesn't wreck. And he sits there while the whole song plays, breathless. And his career literally changes after that. And I can look back to my studies and I can name half a dozen pieces where it's like, what did I just hear? And that's what I want to know from you. And it's really hard to just give me one. But can
Only one? Oh, boy.
Well, you can give me two. But what are those pieces that's changed your world, stopped your time?
Does it have to be impacting your whole musical career or just you?
No, that's a broad question. You,
Okay.
and as an individual, this can be a personal thing,
Well,
anything. It doesn't have to be classical music either, Michael.
okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, you're all going to laugh so much. You're going to, you can come at me. That's okay, but I'm going to own this. My mother loved the musical Hello, Dolly.
Yeah?
Okay? The Barbra Streisand soundtrack.
Okay.
It would be on all the time. And there is a song on that. It's titled Before the Parade Passes By. And this is a song speaking directly to the fact that don't sit on the sidelines, get out there and be part of life, engage. And that is just like this anthem. I know it sounds silly, but it is potent in terms of what the message is for that song.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't wait for the parade to pass you by. This one life, jump in and be part of it.
Do it.
Do it. Absolutely. Make a mistake, get back up and go do it again. If it was a classical piece, the one that really turned me on to actually like saying, okay, this is the career that I want to do. When I was younger, it was the Brandenburg Concerto No. 3.
Oh, really?
Bach Brandenburg No. 3. Yeah. I just could not get enough of that. The energy, the layering. I said, wow, I want to do that. So that was like when I was 6 and 7. So early understanding. And then later on in college, like this is exactly what I should be doing. And I pulled over. It was the Snitka String Trio. String Trio. That just, holy cow. The depth and the pathos involved in that piece. If you haven't heard that, don't listen to the string orchestra version. Go ahead straight to the true string trio version. And there are something like 24, 25 recordings commercially out there of this piece.
Right.
But that was, without question, when I was more informed listener, the one that really just grabbed me and said, yeah, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Now, this next question comes from the realization that I need to broaden my listening. And I also want to give recognition to people who have not historically gotten a lot of recognition. So you've already actually named a couple. We could say Mara Gibson, Stacey Garrett. Who else would you add to that list who is a female or minority composer that you think we should get to know?
Okay. I'm going to list two that I've never commissioned.
Okay.
But their music I just really believe strongly in. One is Tamika Reed. She's a cellist here in Chicago, composer. She straddles the line between jazz and classical. And I really recommend you listen to Prospective Dwellers. There's a fantastic recorded performance of this by the Spectral String Quartet here in Chicago. Super, super performance. Tamika Reed, just super bright future. I also highly recommend Betty Oliveros. Betty Oliveros, an Israeli composer.
Okay.
And listen to the piece Neharut. It's cathartic.
Really?
Big color, massive scale involving choir and orchestra, epic proportions. And it's probably 5 years old at most.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, recent piece. Evan Williams. He's a good friend of mine. And this is somebody who I have commissioned recently. And he's writing a piece now based on Edgar Allan Poe for viola and piano for me. But Evan Williams is somebody that
Does
we
this
also
mean we get
to
like build you into an alcove of the wall and like brick you in while you're
Oh
playing?
my gosh, my heart. No, but Evan is a big William or Edgar Allan Poe fan. And he raised this idea. And I said, yes, let's run with it because you sound really passionate about it. So, and how can you go wrong with Poe, right?
Well, you can't.
There's drama.
And macabre.
Yes.
All the things we want in life.
So those three.
Okay, wonderful. I think books are some of the most untapped resource we have available to us. If you want collected wisdom and insight on how to not make the mistakes that people have made who have gone before you, books are a great way to do it. And I'm not just looking for nonfiction or books about music, but fiction teaches us a lot about the world and how to act in it. But anything that can create or benefit our personal, creative, or even our business lives, could you recommend a book for us to read?
Gosh, I've gone through 3 editions of this book. It's not a self-help book. It's more philosophy.
Okay.
And some of you probably already know this. It's Art and Fear by Orland and Bays. It's a short read. It's probably only 130 pages long, almost pamphlet format size. It's not very big. You can get through it in an afternoon. But again, it's not a self-help book. It's a book that they ask you questions. that you have to really address that most people don't address. Like, why are you a musician? It's surprising how few musicians actually have not an answer, but haven't thought about that, right? So how can we expect our listeners to actually want to be invested in us if we don't know why we're doing this, or at least have an ambition to steer towards?
Yeah.
It also raises really damn good questions like, wait, can I say that? Sorry.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. They raise questions like, if you're teaching, are you teaching because you need the deification of your students? Or are you teaching because you're trying to help the next generation?
That's an important question
Do
to
you
ask.
need the accolades? Do you need to have approval to engage with this?
Mm-hmm.
And it also, the book started from basically frustration out of having writer's block. Both authors are writers, and they wondered, why in the world do we love writing? Why are we so terrified to put something on the page if we love writing? Right? Think about composers who love composing, but they're also terrified to put something on the page.
Right.
This can help not give you answers, but make you ask some questions to address those issues. I love the book. I make any student that I work with, I pass that out to them.
That's good. I'm going to put that on the list.
It's a good book. Art and Fear.
Art and Fear.
Yes.
Michael, where can people find you on the internets, and how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, easy. I'm seemingly a little too much everywhere sometimes. I have a website, easy, michaelhallviola.com.
There you go.
Yeah. And email you can get from that. I also have a YouTube channel representing pieces from Mara Gibson to Eric Moe, Mary Koryumjian, Jim Mobley, a bunch of other pieces. Some stuff about the Indonesian orchestra as well. Bandung Philharmonic has a website with lots of, if you want to hear the orchestra, just do a search, Bandung Philharmonic, Bandung, to hear what's going on in Indonesia. And of course, I'm on Twitter, mhall_then Viola.
Yeah. Very involved with the Muso chat scene. And yeah, it's great.
Those gentlemen and ladies are doing a fantastic job, by the way. Let me just give praise to the Muso chat originators. They have
Garrett,
done something that
Shia,
is so important. Yes.
All of them.
Megan. Yep. Unbelievable personalities. And again, examples of people who are giving, empowering other people. And even if it's not all the answers, they're, again, just like that book, they're making us ask the right questions.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Michael, this has been tremendous. You have been incredibly generous. 2 mornings in a row, I got to spend time with you, start my day with breakfast and a conversation, and this time we recorded it properly. So thank you for your time. You're an amazing person. It's so much more. I mean, I've heard you play, and it's superlative.
Thank you.
But more than
goodness.
that, you're tremendous. And when I first heard of you, it was from Megan Enan, a mutual friend of ours. We were driving in the car, long road to the New Music Gathering. And she said, I can't wait for you to meet Michael.
Oh my goodness.
He is a great collaborator, but he makes every room he enters better.
Wow. Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Garrett. This is absolutely a pleasure. You make this so easy. You make all of us feel at ease when we go through this. And I forgot the microphone was even here.
Oh, so, good.
Thank you. And thank you to you again for providing this service to all of us in the new music community, because we're all learning every time we hear a new podcast of yours.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. That's a wrap.
This episode of The Portfolio Composer has been supported by Dorico, the new professional music notation and composition software from Steinberg. Dorico has been designed from the ground up to be a flexible and powerful tool. Whether you're a composer or arranger, a teacher or student, working in music engraving and publishing, or working in producing music for media such as film, TV, and games. Compared to other scoring programs, Dorico is fast, fluid, and efficient. Designed for comfortable use on a laptop on the go, but seamlessly scaling up to working on multiple large displays in the studio. It has a beautiful, modern, and uncluttered user interface that allows you to focus on your music. Dorico also embraces the traditions of the finest printed music and produces pages of such balance and proportion by default, you'll be amazed. You can bring music into Dorico from your existing software using Music XML or MIDI. And you can try Dorico out completely free of charge for 30 days by downloading a trial version from dorico.com/TPC. Try it today and experience the future of scoring for yourself.